this episode we'll mention a few more, but first, the architect of the Leafs collapse in the 1980s like a bird. What a douche. Anyway, you have no idea what he has done to the Leafs franchise. Hatred across the world. And of course they said if Ballard wasn't such a cheapskate. I know people were talking about Ballard and what he did to the WHA Maple Leaf Garden Memories, a book made in 1999 to commemorate the closing of the gardens. Harold Ballard did something so devious, I like to say. He tried to cash in on concession sales by closing down all the water fountains on a hot garden day in 1960. Woodstock 99. But that's not the worst of it. Harold Ballard is just nothing but trouble. But you gotta believe that at least he had the guts. Next up is a Leaf goaltender who played in the 71 playoffs, the ill-fated 71 series against the New York Rangers. I'm not talking Jacques Plante. And yes, Jacques Plante did play for the Rangers in the 1960s. People tend to forget it was him and Doug Harvey who was sent to the Rangers in 1963 for Worsley among others. But let us not forget that Jacques Plante did play for the Leafs for a few seasons. He of course played at age 45 in the WHA for the Oilers. But might I digress. Plante had a protege also from the province of Quebec by the name of Bernie Parent. Bernie Parent actually started his career as part of the Boston system. And then he went to the Flyers, but the Flyers didn't see any promise in him, so they dealt him to the Leafs. I don't remember who the Leafs sent back, but Bernie Parent was a Maple Leaf in 1971. Parent played a pretty mean goaltending game, and so on and so forth. I will run down the stats for you when I get my fabulous Leaf book. Aha! Here it is. Okay. Looking in the back pages with the seasons and all of that. Plante actually came from St. Louis, May 1970. I guess I didn't say he played for the Expansion Blues in the first 3 Stanley Cups they've been to, and the only 3. But anyway, might I digress. Bernie Parent came in, and beautifully, I may add. He had a 17, 18, and 9 year back in 71, 72. That's not bad. He was actually 8th in goals against average. Parent was traded February 1st, 1971 from Philly to Toronto in exchange for Bruce Campbell and Mike Walton. I just corrected myself. Anyway, and in 72, 73, we got rid of both. I'll say it later, but I must say that Bernie Parent was an okay goaltender, but he went supernova after a few years with the Philadelphia Blazers of the...
Enjoyed it. Great bunch of kids. Rangers trying to work it out of their own end and having difficulty. Shot saved by Thomas. There hasn't been all that many shots on goal by either team. The checking's been good. 5-3 as a matter of fact. Flyers. Here's Esposito breaking in. Don Maloney's in front. Wide by Esposito. Penalty in front. Penalty in front of the net as Don Maloney is pulled down, and Bernie Parent got cut, it looks like. He skates toward his bench. He pulled off his mask as he comes across. It might have been a stick around the eye. It's about the only place he'd be vulnerable there.
Esposito going down on the right-hand side. Had Maloney way on the left-hand side, but Jimmy Watson pulling down Maloney after the play when Esposito shot wide. Jimmy Watson's stick, I believe, came up and hit Parent.
In this episode, I am talking about the WHA, not the Women's Hockey Association. You pervs. Anyway, I don't know why I said that. Anyway, the backstory of the WHA is that after seeing the success of the ABA, the American Basketball Association, being the number 2 league behind the National Basketball Association, or the NBA, Gary Davidson found had a California lawyer by the name of Dennis Murphy help him create the World Hockey Association to compete with the NHL for players and whatnot, and for drafted players. It was a good concept. Several WHA teams were good, such as the Birmingham Bulls, the Quebec Nordiques, the Winnipeg Jets, the Hartford Whalers, the Edmonton Oilers, and the greatest WHA team not to make it to the expansion of 79, the Houston Aeros, with Gordie Howe and his sons, Mark and Marty Howe. But let us not forget that in the WHA, anything was possible. There were crappy teams like the Minnesota Fighting Saints, who had to go through 2 incarnations, the New York, New Jersey Knights, the Ottawa Nationals, the Calgary Cowboys, a team of destiny. Their first pick was the aforementioned Bernie Perrant. But the problem was they couldn't come up with the money, and yet they couldn't compete in the night. And there was a Zamboni problem. The game was canceled because of the ice conditions. Kind of like a preseason game between the Ravens and the Eagles. Actually went out there and tried to calm everyone down, but they threw the orange pucks right at his head. What kind of a-holes would do such a thing? Did serve notice, taking away such players as J.C. Tremblay, Bobby Hall, Gordie Howe, well, after he retired in 72, technically, to the WHA, as I mentioned in my first video. But let us not forget that the 4 WHA teams, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Quebec, and Hartford, went into, took them to 1983 to make an impact. They went to the finals. And then they won the next 5 years, they won 4 titles. The others actually served notice in 1981 when they actually meant something. And that was when they took down Montreal, whose goaltender, the 7A set up the Oilers in my back pocket, but then the Oilers didn't actually know what he said in French, but Kevin Lowe, legend has it, actually told them what it was. And the Oilers did beat the Oilers, the Habs. They swept them, and of course the Oilers had Wayne Gretzky put the Habs in his back pocket. Anyways, one of their greatest playoff runs was in 1985. They went all the way to the Wales final, but Philadelphia and a few referees, legend has it, actually were picky. The Hartford Whalers, how many playoff series did they win in Hartford? 1. Against the Habs, Game 7, double overtime, Russ Courtnall. But I will show you the Russ Courtnall thing when Russ Courtnall is mentioned. Got the Winnipeg Jets, crappy as crap can be. 2 playoff series victories in their history. At least they were in Hartford, and they were both against Calgary. And then, after beating Calgary, Edmonton crushed them like grapes.